Hey everybody, today on Rahdo Runs Through, we're taking a look at a prototype of Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, as you can clearly see, I am not in my home where I normally do these videos, and I am actually in Manchester, England. They flew us out for a lovely press event and also to play the game and give it a shot. So, obviously, while this is not a paid preview or anything like that, you know, take these things with a grain of salt because they've been so nice to me. But I'm just going to show you what the game is about, and then I'm going to bring in the lead designer to talk about the game and hopefully talk about some of the questions that I bet you are going to have when it comes to what this game is all about. So let's get in here. We've got this cool set. We've got 3 different cameras that I can cut between and make things difficult for myself in the editing room. Why do I do this to myself? Anyway, let's talk about the game. This is Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This is a standalone sequel or standalone expansion to the Monster Hunter World board game that recently had a Kickstarter and is very close to fulfilling, or is maybe shipping out as this video goes up. But if you haven't, heard about that game, if you don't know anything about that, let's just talk about what the game is. This is a campaign game where you have bits of story and the prep in preparation to fight against a big boss battle. So sometimes there's things like this. You've got this big, minotaur kind of looking guy. We've got more dragony folks, things like this. And all these sculpts are very cool, but they're also very fearsome enemies. So it's all about these big boss battle events when you are going up against them. You've got your team of adventurers. There's a lot of different, not really classes exactly. They're more, I mean, they are, but they're focused on the weapons that they have. And if you've played Monster Hunter, the video game, you know that that is an extremely important aspect of your build. So you've got your different heroes. They're going up against some monsters, and you're duking it out. There's a really cool system when you're playing through the game where, the monster will have its attack, and you can kind of see what's coming up ahead of time. They've got these attack cards, and these are going to show a little bit of like, oh yeah, this is going to be a horns attack. It's going to go after the farthest away enemy, and so you know a little bit about what's coming. You can kind of prepare with that, and then when it actually does its attack, it's going to give you a lot of stuff that's telling you about where it's attacking, where it's moving first, if it's hitting everybody, if it's doing elemental damage. There's all kinds of stuff that shift around between the different monsters that you're fighting. So you have a lot of things that you have to keep in mind, but it works well enough that you are able to react when sometimes you're able to react, and then sometimes things just happen and you got to kind of deal with the consequences. But you always have a little bit of an idea of what's going on. Anyway, after the attack, or sometimes before, if it's really charging up, a number of players will get to take their turns by playing a number of cards. And we've got these player boards that are all about, this is the number of cards you can hold in your, this is your stamina. So I'm playing, cards, I'm going from left to right. Once this is filled, I can't really do anything, though cards are going to be shifting out as you play. You're only able to play a certain number of cards as you go anyway. So there are limited resources in terms of what you are playing, as well as important strategic choices of the cards that you are playing. Because in classic monster fighting goodness, there's things that do a little extra damage, things that will allow you to move before you attack, move after you attack. Positioning is a very big part of this game, and that's actually a thing that I think is really important to note. When you are playing this game, you're not just stuck in one position wailing on this big monster. It is going to be moving around, you are going to be moving around, and you are trying to position yourself in advantageous ways, because this monster has different attacks coming from the front, from the back, from the sides. There's all kinds of different things when you are comparing the different monsters between them. So in the playthrough that I did, I was able to play through this game with Jesse from Crackalope, Ashton from Shelfside, and the designer of the game. I don't know if that video is up just yet. I think it might be a few more days before that goes up, but when it goes up, definitely check that out to get a really good example of the gameplay as it goes. But that's the gameplay in a skirmish, in the arena mode, as it would be called. And so this does a really good job of setting up these boss battles. You can have them completely independent. You choose a monster you want to fight. It gives you the different kinds of resources, the different kinds of materials that you want to work with. But that's not the only thing. It is also a campaign. Now, I wasn't able to check out the campaign, so I want to talk to the designer who can tell me all about that. So let's get him in. All right, so I'm here with Jamie Perkins, the lead designer of the game, and what I really wanted to get a sense of from you, because we've only gotten to try out the combat in this game, I also want to get a sense of the campaign mode of this.
Sure.
So can you run us through what the campaign mode looks like, maybe from the beginning, the kinds of, actually like the narrative that you go through, what you're doing to prepare for these fights, and then how that progresses as you play the game.
For sure. So the campaign mode of the board game emulates the core loop of the video game quite well. You actually see that in a single arena quest is what we've been seeing, even though we've just been doing the fighting element of that. But a full quest rotation is you pick a monster that you're going to go and hunt. You'll then go and explore the world and go and hunt it down. For us, that happens through a quest book, where you'll be making choice-based, it's going through a choice-based adventure, kind of like a choose-your-own adventure, going through that, and then you'll find some narrative elements going through that. They're going to sort of do some world building, world setting. You'll find resources along the way as well, so your choices do have an in-game impact. Sometimes you'll hear like a roar in the distance, which will shuffle event cards into your time deck, and other things will happen that will be important to the gameplay. You can also sometimes take damage in that Choose Your Own Adventure quest as well, so you can enter the fight at a bit of disadvantage if you've taken the wrong route. So that takes sort of like maybe 10-15 minutes at the start of your quest. And then once you've found the monster, because it'll tell you when you've found the monster at the end of your adventure, you then set up for the hunting phase, which is where the combat then takes place. So then you'll face the monster for somewhere around sort of like 45 minutes-ish, once you have an understanding of the game, how it works. So you play that for about an hour. If you have defeated the monster, or even if you haven't, what then happens is you go to a HQ phase, where you take the rewards from the quest back with you and the resources to go and craft new equipment, new weapons, new armor. So the intention is that you would take, so if you defeat Rajang, say, then you'll go and be able to carve parts of Rajang and then make weapons and armor out of the monster you've just slain. You'll also find other bits and pieces along the way, I said, as well, to sort of create more generic pieces of equipment in case you didn't quite get enough resources from the monster that you're facing directly. How that works is it doesn't happen on these particular demo cards, but in the final game and in World, you can flip over that physiology card, and then there is a roll table on the back of it.
Got it.
So how that will work is, depending on the level of monster and how many hunters are playing the game, you'll roll, I think, between 2 and 5 dice on that table. It's like a 12-slot table, and how that works is, say if you roll 3 dice, you roll like a 1, 2, and a 3. You could take options 1, 2, and 3. You just have those 3 options. They're into your resources. To give you some flexibility over which parts of the monster you get, because you might need specific parts for your weapon, you can add the dice together. So you could take the 2 and the 3 and get a 5. So you would have less resources overall, but get the specific one that you want.
Got it.
And then you also have break rewards. So during the fights, we were adding break tokens to the parts of the monster, which will have an in-game effect, like stumbling the monster around or something like that. And then if you've broken parts of the monster when it comes to rolling for rewards, you'll just get those break rewards automatically on top of anything you roll. So it's worth breaking those monster parts, not just for an in-game effect, but you get more resources afterwards.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of while you're playing the game, while you're in combat, you're making choices that are potentially benefiting you outside of combat. So these choices are, I'm going to put break tokens on this. Maybe it would be better in this combat if I put break tokens in this other location if I'm attacking a different side. But this, the front is almost broken. If we can get that, we get the cool loot, whether we win or not, right?
Exactly. So you get the break rewards even if you fail the quest.
So I always love when games have that kind of connection between the narrative elements or the outside of combat sections and the inside of combat sections. So I think that is interesting. And I know that I haven't played the video game Monster Hunter, but this kind of game does appeal to me of getting those resources, crafting the items, and mainly developing your character.
Yes.
So how much does crafting come into play for this game as you're going through the campaign? Does it completely change your character? Is it more of a subtle difference between mission to mission, like getting the new gear and stuff like that?
I would say it's probably somewhere in between. So to give you some examples of what happens when you upgrade a weapon is, let's say, take this card in front of us, the Ogre's Jaw. So for this weapon, when you swap out your previous greatsword, it will tell you on the card which cards to remove and which cards to add to your attack deck. So it's already making the edits to how your hunter fights and plays in the next hunt you play. And there are usually 2 levels of upgrade to a weapon. So you could upgrade the Ogre's Jaw again to something else. You will have 4 cards or 6 cards you're sliding out and 6 cards that are coming in. So that will already change how your hunter operates. And it will do things like add elemental damage to your deck. It will maybe change how much break values you have. It might give you better stamina recovery. So over the course of the game, you're sort of gathering an armory of not only stronger weapons, but also weapons that are particularly good at a particular job. So when you start learning about which monsters are strong and weak to certain things, so Rajang's right in front of us, he has a weakness to ice resistance. So if you go and fight Rajang with ice-equipped weapons, you'll have ice-damaging attacks and do better damage to him than if you take something that he's immune to.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So over a period of time, you could go. So we know when you play. Sorry, I should have said as well. Your objective in the campaign is to defeat the most difficult version of the most difficult monster that you have.
Got it.
So if you're playing the core box, Rajang will be your boss monster that you then have to face the most difficult version of. That's called the Tempered Investigation quest, because there are multiple different versions of the monster you can play.
So we faced against Rajang in the playthrough video that we did. So what was that? The like strongest version of that probably?
That was the entry level Rajang.
Cool. That was cool.
So, yeah. So
I had a feeling, yeah. But even entry level, that was an intense fight.
Yes.
So I've gotten to try this game 2 times now, facing off against a couple of different monsters, and they definitely feel different to go up against. But one, how many different monsters are you going to be facing against in the core box?
Yep.
And also, how different are they from level to level when they increase?
So there are 4 monsters in the core box, and these are 2 of them. Each version of each monster has 3 different difficulty levels. So you have an assigned quest, which is meant to be your introduction to the monster. That's the version of the Rajang that we fought. Then you have 2 investigation quest levels, so investigation quest and tempered investigation quests. Those are the kind of quests that you can repeat if you want to in the campaign to get more and more rewards from the same monster. So each monster will use the same behavior deck. So there's still the same, I think it's like 13 to 15 cards, depending on if they have a turf war deck or not, and that will stay the same. Now, how that changes from game to game is that you will shuffle in different amounts of cards from that deck to form a different different content to the behavior deck. So going to pick on Rajang because he's right in front of us. So he'll have 7 cards in his first behavior deck. You will only ever play with 5 of those at once. So every time you play with Rajang, that's going to automatically edit itself a little bit.
Okay.
And then for the Enraged deck, when he gets angry, there are 6 cards that you'll only ever play with 5 of. So again, it has a little bit of just inbuilt replayability there because of different combinations of behaviors. On top of that, the physiology card is what changes between the different levels of the monster. So we'll have a higher amount of health, higher amount of armor, different break rules as well that might be stronger or weaker, depending on the level of the monster. And then also the special rules might change for the monster as well.
Sure.
So for Rajang, you're adding rage tokens. It might mean that the threshold at which he enrages changes, gets smaller. You might even just have straight bonus flat damage. So you might have this version of monster now just does +2 damage with all of its lightning attacks or something like that.
Sure.
So even though the behavior deck stays the same, it might hit more. It might hit harder, or it might be more difficult to dodge. There are benefits that are applied across those behavior cards.
So it seems like having knowledge of these different units is going to help you. It's not necessarily going to mean that you're playing the same fight over and over again.
Correct.
But you are going to have a little bit more experience to have an idea of what's coming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The intention is that you should be able to kind of learn as you play. It's not a requirement. Like you can still have a lot of fun and success playing, just like not learning anything about monsters whatsoever. I mean, we've run a lot of demos the last 2 days.
Listen, I love to do a head empty, like no dome strat. Just go for the monster and prevail. Always gonna prevail. So it's fun that you have that option. But I know that people who really love this IP, one of the things that they focus on, and again, this is from an outsider perspective, but one of the things I've definitely keyed into is the fact that preparation and understanding of your target is a big deal.
Yes.
And I want to get back to that in a bit, but you mentioned something that I want to talk about, which is the turf wars. Now, this is something that's new to Iceborne, right?
Correct.
And it seems like something that is a very interesting way to shake things up in the middle of a fight. So why don't you explain what turf wars means in the context of a fight?
So to go back to the video games, turf wars are something that's always been a part of Monster Hunter World. It's not something they added for Iceborne. but we've added it as a mechanic into Iceborne. We've been working on it for quite a long time. The TLDR of the history of that is we didn't feel like we quite were ready to put it into the game for World, so we carried on developing it. What that represents is literally because Monster Hunter World isn't an open world that you can go out and explore, these monsters can run into each other, and when they do, they're not always that friendly. Yeah. So they'll have like a set animation in the video game, they'll do a set amount of damage, sometimes some will win, sometimes a particular one will win in a particular encounter, and we wanted to represent that because it's really cinematically cool watching these monsters have a fight, and you're just kind of trying to survive or make the most of it. And the feeling we wanted to get is that these monsters are going to go after each other, but if you get in the middle, they're still going to come after you.
Yeah, I definitely had that experience when I was playing the first demo game. I was playing against, remember this
Barioth.
Barioth. So playing against Barioth, and then Rajan comes in. This is so sharp.
Sorry.
No, it's a prototype that they're always sharper in the prototypes. I just always forget, and then I'm bleeding everywhere. No, I'm not. Anyway, we were facing off against one monster, and then Rajan comes in the middle of it, and it was both a boon and also terrifying.
Yes.
Because we were doing some damage, we were doing okay, and then this monster comes in and just smacks him.
Yep.
And then we're like, oh, this is great, yeah. And then we realized, oh, he's going to target us next turn?
Right. Right.
Oh, let's run away as far as we can.
Absolutely.
So it ends up being, one, I think, a really cool way to just shake things up, like I said. But it also presents a completely different tactical situation that you have to adapt to.
Yes.
It's that mid-round mayhem kind of thing where, and because I'm assuming any monster can come in.
So not quite. There are a lot of different combinations of turf wars. So there are like canonical turf wars from the video games.
Okay.
And then we're working with Capcom to see which ones that we can gap fill with. Where we want a couple more turf wars in the experience. We're doing some that they're happy to approve. Working closely with them, still in development. Cool. So say for example, the one between these two that we showed is not a canonical turf war. These two wouldn't normally fight in the video game, but we've been allowed to for this.
This is a secret. This is a brand new thing that you're introducing. Right. Cool. So yeah, the turf wars are, I think, a really interesting aspect of it. What else? So what else is new? So for the people who are familiar with Monster Hunter World board game, the other new things I think was the grappling hook. Is that the new?
So the clutch claw card.
The clutch claw card. Thank you.
So the hunters have always had this kind of grappling hook on their arm, and we've made a small amount of use of it in World. With the clutch claw is like a mechanic they added to the grappling hook for Iceborne in the video game. And we've represented kind of the element of the grappling hook where you can latch onto a piece of terrain and move around. That's more useful for kind of ranged hunters as well if they don't want to close the distance with the monster. But the main function of the clutch claw is to target the monster itself, zipline towards it.
Yeah.
And then when in the video game you can ride it and you can damage its armor, which means that your subsequent attacks will deal more damage.
Right. So you come in for a really cool zipline in and then just tear it apart.
Right.
With a really strong attack. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So that's an aspect of it that I think is really cool. Now, I'm generally, when I play games like this, I'm usually playing it at 2-player. Now, for the demos, we've been playing it at 4-player, but I know that you have ways to play this at 2-player.
Yes.
So you can go through what it looks like and like how different it plays at different player counts.
So there's elements of the game that are built to naturally scale to different amounts of players, just as it happens. So if we're going to go for the behavior cards, because the behavior cards are what tell you as the players how many turns you get to take. So this represents whether the monster's moving quickly, moving slowly. It's your reaction time between what's going on with the monster, how well you can read it. So if you're playing with 4 players, if you're playing with 2 players, you'll get the same number of hunter turns. It just might mean that if you're playing with only 2 players, you might get to go again before the monster goes. Okay. So that already kind of evens the playing field quite a lot between 2, 3, and 4 players. What we add in as an additional for the 2-player game specifically is palicos. And these are
These are the pets, right?
Yeah, these are little sort of humanoid cats that are in there that everyone loves palicos. You can have them wearing armor, you can give them different gadgets, they can follow you around. In the video games, if you have 1 or 2 hunters, you get a palico that comes with you. So we reflected it exactly like that in the board game, which also works so nicely for us because we just needed a little bit of a boon for 2 players. The main reason for that is because of your health pool. Yeah. So with 4 players, you all have 8 health. You're all capable of tanking probably 1 hit in the fight at some point. So you could take 4 hits between you before anybody faints. You've got 2 players, you can only do 2 hits. Yeah. So the palicos come in and just give you a little bit of an extra boon, whether it's distracting the monster for a turn, or laying a trap for it, or they can throw something called a palarang, which can chop parts of it off, and stuff like that. So there's lots of kinds of different gadgets that the palicos come with. We have those as an inbuilt part of the 2-player game for the 2-player experience. They're also added as an optional rule for 3-4 player games if you want to lower the difficulty level of the game.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, or just because you want to play with palicos.
Sure. I mean, why wouldn't you? Honestly, if you can have a cat in your game, you probably should.
Right.
What would you say is your favorite player count of this? Do you think there's an ideal one? Do you think it works just as well at any player count?
I genuinely do think it works just as well at any player count. I think you can play the game on your own, but we recommend that you play with 2 hunters when you do.
Sure.
So it means that if you're playing on your own, you're playing managing 2 sets of stamina.
Managing 2. And from what I've seen with the gameplay, that's not going to be a difficult thing to manage. Yes, you do have to 2-hand it, but you're only really focusing on 1 at a time. I think that would definitely be manageable.
Yeah.
So. All right, well, now that the bosses aren't listening, I just saw them walk into the other room. Personal favorite for player count?
For player count? No, like seriously, I'm being absolutely totally honest with you.
Oh, you're right. I do see them. They're still listening. Okay, no, you're right. You're smart. Okay, cool. It's playing good at different player counts. I know it tends to be pretty important for our audience, and also for me. Generally, I go for games like this at 2-player. So, like I said, I don't have a connection to this video game, but I can see the appeal for it. But I do want to know, what was the most important thing that you thought was that you felt you needed to bring into this game for people who are fans of the video game?
Sure. There's quite a few things there, to be fair, but I'm going to pick one.
Sure.
It's going to be the sense of scale. For the first thing off, obviously, we chose to go with the massive miniatures. We chose to represent as close to true scale of the miniatures as humanly possible. But that's also baked into the gaming experience. Like, the fact that the monster goes first, it tells you how many player turns you get to take. Is meant to be this element of, you're not in control of the situation. You're activating as much as the monster is allowing you to with how it's choosing to act in the way it's doing so. The fact that the monster will, when it chases you down, it's not just going to stop when it runs into you. If it's got more movement left in its behavior card, it's going to keep pushing you back and chasing you across the arena. They're very mobile, and it's that sense of these things are just going to run through you like a bulldozer. And other monsters as well. If a monster is moving, they'll push other monsters around as well.
The pushing mechanic, I think, it's a simple thing, but it does so much to change the landscape of the fight.
Right.
So that is something that I mentioned it earlier in the video, but that's the thing that is key. I've played so many of these boss battlers where it kind of just ends up where it's like, oh, this person's targeting this creature. It's already next to them. Nothing changes.
Yes.
But this is constantly moving around.
Yeah, we like to have sort of mobile, fluid experiences where possible, and I think we've managed to achieve that here. So I'm glad that comes across.
Yeah. And then on the other side of things, what do you think is going to be most enticing to the people who don't play the Monster Hunter video game? What is going to bring them in?
So I think that honestly, that this is a game that's not too difficult to break into. So there are boss battlers out there of varying levels of complexity, and if I were to put this on a scale, I would say it's probably somewhere in the middle. So if you're looking for something where you want to do a boss battler, you want to have elements of card play, of learning the game system, of learning how your hunter works, lots of different player classes to play with, but ultimately is not impenetrable to break into. It's still accessible, I would say. So the fact that it's probably on the mid scale if you're looking for something that's not overly complicated, if you know nothing about Monster Hunter World.
Excellent. Well, I think that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for talking to me about this. I mean, thank you all for inviting me down here. And again, keep an eye out for the gameplay video of this, because it's going to give you a really good sense of how this all works out in the fight. But yeah, that's all. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you folks next time. Bye-bye.